Well, greetings and salutations and welcome to another Newsman Weekly podcast. Here we are with episode number 7, and I got to be honest with you, I'm tired, boys and girls. It was a crazy damn weekend in Cincinnati. Back-to-back Luke Combs concerts down there, 2 sold-out crazy parties in Paycor Stadium, home of the Bengals. I guarantee there were more fans of Luke Combs than there are in that stadium when the Bengals play. But anyway, I left Mansfield on Friday morning. I got back Sunday afternoon. We'll talk about that more in a bit, but I will say this. Some of you people driving on the interstate, you need your license revoked because y'all have clearly forgotten how the hell to drive. Anyway.
Going slow in the fast lane.
Going slow in the fast lane, going fast in the slow lane, changing lanes without signaling, just stupid behavior. Okay, the good news is we have a special edition of the Newsman Weekly podcast today. As many of you know, my less than stellar journalism career began as a high school sports reporter some 44 years ago.
Wow, 44 years.
44 years, yes. I understand this state's love for Friday night lights and high school football. Trust me, I feel the same, and to be honest, there's really nothing like it. Now, the 2024 season begins in just over a couple of weeks, so on today's show, we're going to get you ready for all things football. In a few minutes, we'll be joined by Richland Source managing editor Larry Phillips, sports reporter Curt Conrad, and also Hayden Gray, our Shelby/North Richland County reporter, who's also a big part of our Friday night coverage team. But my long weekend in the Queen City means I got to lean on my own teammates a little bit more than usual today. No. So I am joined again by our show's executive producer, Zach Heiser, the head of newsroom product at Source Media Properties. Good morning, Zach.
Good morning, Carl. Good morning, everyone.
And we're also joined again by Grant Ritchie from Knox Pages, the video producer for the Newsman Weekly podcast. Ritchie, welcome and congratulations once again on successfully eluding law enforcement and making your way to IdeaWorks from your mansion down in Mount Vernon.
I'm surprised they let me in here today because we didn't have a video last week. I was getting thousands of emails asking, sir, why no video? We like the shorts. And sorry about that to everyone, but yeah, we're doing a lawn video today. And so hopefully that goes well.
Most of those emails were just from me because I'm about to take video producer out of your title, okay, just so you know.
All right. Well, it was co-producer last week, so.
And you know, you're working your way down the list. Pretty soon you'll be coffee fetcher if we don't get something going. All right, guys, but we'll talk about the news of the week. I know what I did for fun this weekend, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But how about you guys? Where were you at this weekend, if anywhere?
Well, for me, I'm going on vacation tomorrow, so, just packing, getting stuff ready. I did go see Beauty and the Beast.
At the Renaissance.
At the Ren, yes. On Sunday. It was iconic. Great show, great sets. We had Ryan Sheely and Kayla Perez in, 2 or 3 weeks ago?
2 or 3 weeks. Yep, and Leah Gasoris.
And Leah, of course. So you can go check that out if you saw Beauty and the Beast. You can check out kind of their conversation with Carl. But yeah, it was really good. Took the kids. They loved it. It's cool.
So a sober experience of a weekend, getting ready for a crazy,
for me. Yeah,
crazy vacation.
Nothing. I'm just kind of laying low until we go on vacation.
Yeah.
And
going back to Panama.
Sure.
Yeah. Gotta get crazy down there.
Is that a song?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
It's not a Luke Combs song anyway. Richie, I know you had a big weekend. You kind of intimated that a minute ago, but what did you do for fun down in Knox County?
I hosted a dinner party on Saturday with some friends. I like hosting dinner parties sometimes. Just made some gin and tonics. We had I had like some spicy shrimp and homemade coleslaw, so that was pretty good. Played some gin rummy. I don't know if any of you have played gin rummy before, but that was a lot of fun.
So you were drinking gin and tonics.
Yes.
Eating spicy shrimp and playing gin rummy.
Doesn't make me sound like 50 years old.
Very cultured for Mount Vernon.
At what point were the police called, and how did you respond when you opened the door to see them standing there?
Well, working in the news business, I got some connections. So.
All right. Well, keep that to yourself. But
Okay.
anyway, it's good to know the culture is alive and well in Knox County. Now, guys, I'm not sure if either one of you are country music fans, but my God, what a show Luke
Yeah,
Combs
tell us
puts
about
on.
your weekend.
Okay, we bought tickets more than a year ago to his weekend in Cincinnati. An old man online technology confession. My wife asked me to go buy them online. She was a big Luke Combs fan. I was a semi-Luke Combs fan. So I went online. I didn't know I was buying tickets to a Friday night show and Saturday night show.
Wait, you bought tickets for both nights?
Yes,
and this wasn't like a weekend festival. This is just
it's Luke Combs back to back. And I also didn't know I was buying 4 tickets
okay.
to Friday night and Saturday night. Fortunately, we had friends who were willing to pick up 2 tickets on Friday and 2 on Saturday. But I got to tell you, it was like a 2-night music festival, to be honest. They had 4 different opening acts each night.
Oh, that's nice. That's cool.
They had artists like Cody Jinks, Haley Witters, Jordan Davis, Mitchell Tenpenny. I mean, there were some really talented folks. So it really wasn't like you're just going to the same concert every night. Luke's show was a little different both nights. So the Reds were home Friday and Saturday nights at the nearby Great American Ballpark. Really smart business folks in the area along the banks of the Ohio River set up like a huge block party between the 2 stadiums, a great Dora. So you could get a beer in one bar in a plastic cup, walk to the next one, walk to the next one. About 80,000 people there each night between the 2 venues. Music started both nights around 5:45. Combs didn't come on till about 9 o'clock, and that stadium was electric. And the big man, and when I say big man, I'm being honest. This guy's probably 5'11", 6 foot. Luke's got to go 250, 260. I mean, he is not a small guy. The big man from North Carolina owned the stage, and I got to tell you, the production values were as good as any I've seen at any concert event, rock or country.
Nice. What about the T Swift concert you went to?
Yeah, that'll happen never. Luke sang all of his hits over the past 10 years, stuff like Hurricane, When It Rains It Pours, She Got the Best of Me, Beautiful Crazy. One of my favorites, Beer Never Broke My Heart. One of the cool moments came, he does a song called Doing This. And that's a song he wrote in response to somebody in the media who asked him once what he would be doing if he hadn't become such a big country music star. Keep in mind, this dude's only 34 years old.
Oh, wow.
I mean, he is young, and he's all over the charts. Well, he told the audience that 8 years ago in Cincinnati, he was singing at the Tin Roof Bar, which is a nightclub there in Cincinnati, and he said, quote, I realized the answer would be I'd still be doing this if I wasn't doing this. I just wouldn't be playing in the stadium. 8 years ago, I played the Tin Roof in Cincinnati. 8 years ago. I would just be back there tonight having just as much fun as I'm having tonight. So I think the key for Combs is when you look at him, this is a guy who still looks and acts surprised that
he's playing a stadium show.
I mean, sold out stadium shows every weekend from Los Angeles to New York to Cincinnati. And that song has a lyric that says, I'd have a Friday night crowd in the palm of my hand, cup of brown liquor, couple buddies in a band, singing them damn songs like I am now. I mean, I don't think anything's changed for Luke Combs, and I came away as a much bigger fan.
Yeah, that always comes across too when you can tell they're really genuine.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed every moment of both nights, and it was worth the money for 4 tickets for 2 nights, and stayed at a hotel about a half mile from the stadium so we could just walk down, which it's easier going to it because the stadium's down by the river and the hotel is uphill afterward, which is kind of, plus when you got 58,000 people walking out with you. So, all right.
I'm glad you survived.
It was a weekend, boys and girls, and when you get to be 63 years old, you don't have a lot of, you can't do that.
You're still crushing it, though.
Oh,
you're still crushing it.
Put a beer in my hand, I can't say the rest of that. Anyway, enough of the weekend. Let's talk about some local news before we get to sports. Hey, Mansfield City Council meets tomorrow night. There is legislation related to the B&O Trail Connector to Trimble Road and beyond, but guess what? There will be no discussion or action on zoning regulations for a possible recreational cannabis dispensary in the city. As you may recall, Mayor Jody Perry told local lawmakers in July that she hoped to have those zoning regulations in place for a dispensary for council to vote on tomorrow night. but it's going to take a couple more weeks. I asked the mayor last Wednesday if the legislation was done, and she said it's not. Perry said, quote, "We do have an outside law firm reviewing the drafted language. It's just not going to be done in time for Tuesday. I do plan to try to share it in advance before the next council meeting, which will be August 20th. She said since this is the city's first crack at this, she wants to make sure it's right. Quote, "We just want to make sure we have all our bases covered," end quote, the mayor said. A divided city council passed legislation opening the door for a recreational cannabis dispensary 2 months ago. And I'll be curious what reaction, if any, they're going to have tomorrow night to the delay.
Now, I believe sales started today, actually, throughout the state, but...
Yep, so I don't think there's going to be a problem getting one in Mansfield as soon as this legislation is done. It's got to be in a B2 zone, as we've talked about before. There are several B2 zoning areas that it would fit in, so just a matter of getting the I's dotted and the T's crossed on this. Hey, speaking of mayors, the City of Ontario has a new one. Richland County Republican Party Ontario Central Committee members selected Safety Service Director Chris Knapp last week to complete the unexpired term of Randy Hutchinson, who recently announced he was stepping down and taking a position with the Area Agency on Aging. The 58-year-old Knapp is a retired Ontario high school teacher. He took on the role of City Safety Service Director in 2022, and he told us, "I grew up, I went to school here, my parents came here when GN moved to town, and that's what got us started." He'll be sworn in at the next council meeting on August 7th, and he will serve as mayor through the end of Hutchinson's term in December 2025.
Okay, I was curious about that, how he'll just serve Hutchinson's term.
And if he chooses to, which I think he will, he can run for the spot himself, but he's definitely mayor through 2025. In other news, we learned last week that a proposed new 150,000 square foot industrial spec building near Mansfield Lahm Regional Airport has moved a step closer to reality for Adena Corporation and its CEO Randy Payne. Ohio Department of Development announced Airport West 2 LLC, which is headed up by Payne, will receive a $4 million low-interest loan to help finance construction of the new building on a nearly 16-acre site at 1750 Airport West Parkway. The funds come through that state low-interest loan program. The building's going to cost about $13 million, and the Department of Development said the structure could be expanded to 300,000 square feet if needed, and he'll build it immediately north of the $9 million building that Adena finished in 2022, which was leased to Headstrom Ball Bounce and Sport back in December. So some more good
an industrial
financials.
spec building. So what is that? Just an updated building for the airport?
It is basically a large building that can be modified inside to meet the needs of whatever company or industry that would like it. I believe the one that Headstrom leased, they're primarily using it as storage, which can then be moved out and moved in and shipped and things like that. Primarily as I don't think it's a manufacturing side of things, a distribution point.
Okay.
But another new building, once that gets up, they'll be looking for someone to lease it or buy it outright. But good news because, when I talked to Randy Payne when this idea first came up, this is a guy that's pretty bullish on the future of North Central Ohio because he's obviously a $4 million loan is only part of the $13 million. He's putting a lot of his own money into this project.
That's cool.
So he's got to believe in it. Finally, the 174th Richland County Fair is underway.
Wow, 174.
174 only, and I did not cover the first one, Richie, so don't even try to look it up on Google. Darn you. The fair began its week-long run on Sunday at the fairgrounds on North Home Road. I was pleased to report on Richland Source Friday that a new $1.2 million show arena was ready for the festivities. Ground for that new arena was broken in February, and the aforementioned Adena Corporation did its part by having the 9,200 square foot building done just in time for the fair. The new arena, which is air conditioned, which is a big step up. I walked in there on Friday afternoon to take pictures, and it was really hot outside, and it felt really good.
Did you know it was going to be?
I knew it was going to be, but I didn't know what it would feel like. Because if you've been to the old show arena, there's a lot of fans and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. But it is really nice inside there. It's going to provide additional space and safety for spectators and those showing animals. And it will also increase rental revenue opportunities for the fairgrounds because it can be used in a variety of ways. I can see just almost like Fairhaven Hall. I can see like wedding receptions or conventions or groups or anybody that wants a large space to have an event.
What's the seating like? Is it bleachers or? It's
bleachers right now. I think they're going to have bleachers eventually that like hook into the wall and come out. Right now they've just got the portable ones sitting in there. But I think the plan is to have that. But I imagine you could configure it in a lot of different ways because it's a really wide open space. And it has a great sound system. They had music playing when I was in there. Wasn't Luke Combs, but it was country. But anyway, the fair runs through Saturday night. So, Richie, get out there and enjoy yourself this week. I know you just finished a grueling week at the Knox County Fair. It's time to step up and get a car. I'd like to see you in the Demolition Derby on Saturday night.
Oh, that's fun.
You have a car that's worthy of a demolition derby?
No, I just got my Honda Civic, so I don't think that would work.
Yeah, I don't see you lasting long, but you know what? I think you should do it, and I'll videotape that. We'll just watch you get smashed.
We can make it a membership drive if we get.
Yeah. Whoever becomes a member this week gets an opportunity to come out and whack Richie around the demolition derby ring.
It's worth it.
Let's make it happen.
All right, well, that's enough for now. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by the local high school football experts who are going to get us all ready for the 2024 high school season that starts here in a couple of weeks. Stay with us here at the Newsman Weekly podcast. Well, welcome back to the Newsman Weekly. And damn, this room just got really crowded. Joining me now are Richland Source Managing Editor Larry Phillips,
Hello.
Sports Reporter Curt Conrad, and Hayden Gray, our Shelby North Richland County reporter, who's also a big part of our Friday night football coverage team. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to all of you.
Good morning.
Yeah, thanks for having us in.
9:30 a.m.
9:30 a.m. I am punctual, if nothing else. Curt, let's start with you. As we get ready for the start of a new high school football season, give me your sense about the state of local high school football. Is it better, worse, or about the same as in past years? Give me the 30,000-foot view.
We are living in the golden era of high school football in Richland County. When I first got to town in 2000, we were clearly a basketball area. I may not have appreciated it enough at the time, but Greg Collins had it rolling at senior high, Joe Baylog at Ontario. I didn't realize it then, but that was kind of the golden era of basketball in Richland County. The 90s, the early 2000s. That pendulum has swung in the favor of football and has been there for a while now. It wasn't that long ago that we had two teams playing for state championships in the same season. It's never happened. In 2019, senior high and Lucas were both playing in championship games. We're sending teams deep, not just making the playoffs now, but winning one or two playoff games, which is that's starting to you're starting to keep some pretty exclusive company when you get there. So it's in my 25 years, it's never been better than what it is right now.
Now, Larry, you came to Mansfield not long after me in 1990. You know local sports history as well as anyone. And the fact is, as Curt mentioned, no team from Richland County has ever won a state football title on the field. In fact, no team from North Central Ohio has won one since Galleon, I believe back in 1985, right?
Right.
And that's so long ago. That's the year I got married. I was okay. So, that's a long time ago. So, as Curt mentioned, senior high Lucas got to title games a few years ago, but both of them fell short there. What's it going to take in your mind for a local school to finally get it done in Canton?
Well, Mansfield Senior came as close as a team can come. And they were spectacular that day against Trotwood Madison. A Trotwood Madison kid made probably, I would argue, as good a clutch catch as they've ever seen at Canton to tie that game,
right,
to send that game to overtime. And then in overtime, the Tigers fell a little bit short. But, man, that was such a valiant effort. I really – that one sticks in my mind. But to get over the hump, it's going to be tough. The teams that you see at the state finals, we can already pencil in Mary Stein, Marion Local, Cleveland, Glenville, Lakewood, St. Edward. I mean, that's where we are right this second. So I think getting over the hump, it's gonna take a transcendent talent, and not to put not to put added pressure on it, but Ontario may have a player like that this year. Bodpegn Miller is already committed to Ohio State, and if you're following recruiting, Ohio State is the #1 recruiting class in the country, and Bodpen's probably going to be a little bit of a project for them because he's going to play a position he doesn't play right now. He plays quarterback for Ontario. He's going to be a receiver at Ohio State, but he's got all the things that you can't coach. He's 6'5". He runs a 4.4 40, tremendous athlete. And we say this in basketball a lot, but in football at the quarterback position, somebody can take over a game, and Bodpegn has that ability. Now can he take them all the way to state finals? That's a tremendously tall task for anybody. But in my mind, that's what it would take is somebody like that. Obviously, with very talented, very driven teammates. But when you get to that level, you have to have somebody that can put you over the top. And I don't know if there's anybody blooming like that, quite like Bodpegn.
Now, Hayden, you're the youngest of the group, obviously. You've still got all your natural hair. And congratulations, or at least for the time being. I mean,
sure.
Now that
the rest of us don't even have fake hair.
Yeah. Now that you're a father, I'm going to enjoy watching that hairline recede like the waves on a beach. But anyway, you played for your beloved Shelby Whippets several years ago on a state championship contender. What was that experience like, and what advice would you give to players who were still competing on this fall on the field?
Man, yeah. I mean, the experience was fantastic. I mean, anytime you're fortunate enough to, my freshman year, Eric Will came in at the same time and really started to turn the program around. And then after my freshman year, obviously, Brennan Armstrong and the rest of his tremendously talented class came in. So we kind of had the pleasure of being able to play with those younger guys who had a lot of talent, had a lot of the starting roles on our team, and took us a long way. So that opportunity was fantastic. I still miss that when I'm out there covering games on Friday. I still have memories to that because, like you said, I'm not that far removed from it. But, yeah, I mean, as far as advice for guys now, it would definitely be don't take it for granted. I know that sounds cliche, but those are great memories that I hold on to. But I think one of the biggest things, too, now that I've come more in the last few years to covering these type of games and being on that end of things is, just got to be confident and feel like you belong on the field. I think a lot of our local teams, when you get to those big bright lights, it's kind of intimidating. We don't have a lot of those games around here. So just know that you belong on the field. I mean, I think that these teams that go out and get these championships, man, they just look cool, calm, and collected, and they're confident. They feel like they belong there. So I think that our teams that have a shot this year, they just need to feel like they belong and don't fold under pressure.
Yeah, Carl, I want to jump in here and call to mind that our master of ceremonies, Carl Hunnell, was also part of a high school football playoff team back when making the playoffs was incredibly rare. They took when Carl played. This is how long ago this was.
Thank you.
They only took 4 teams in each division. And is that right, Carl?
Yeah, it was AAA, AA, single A, so
right.
There were 12 teams.
And Carl was hard to believe wingback for New Concord John Glenn. They got to the state semifinals. They played at Dayton's Welcome Stadium against
Hamilton Baden.
There you go, Hamilton Baden. And you could speak to what Hayden was just talking about. What were the lights like in 1978?
Well, you have to picture, we come from this little town in New Concord, okay? Population's like 6, okay? And we go to Dayton, Ohio to play a team from Hamilton, which, thank you, OHSAA. And your
that neutral site, 6 miles from Hamilton.
Yeah. We took a bus that broke down on 270 in Columbus for an hour while we sat along the highway that day. They dressed at their high school and drove over. But, yeah, our coaches were smart enough. We didn't know what AstroTurf was. So they did take us to Columbus that week, one day that week to practice. And I'm like, wow, this is interesting. This is like – and – Welcome Stadium at that time, the AstroTurf was AstroTurf. It was thin carpet on top of concrete.
Cement. Yeah.
When it looked nice, but yeah, you got enough rug burns on that to last. But yeah, it was an amazing night. We lost 7-0. First touchdown our starting defense had given up in 6 weeks, and they beat an All-Ohio defensive back with a fingertip catch in the end zone to beat us. And We fumbled we didn't turn the ball over all season, but we fumbled twice inside the 10, and we didn't throw the ball at all that year. We threw 40 times in 10 games. It was a different game. But we had 2 passes intercepted inside the 20. We had a touchdown called back on a really bad holding call. So, yeah, I have a lot of really great memories
from 46 years ago.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a detail he remembers from that.
Yeah, exactly. I can't tell you a thing about the 10 games we won during the regular season. But that game, losing in the state semifinals to a team which then got walloped by Marcus Merrick and Darwin Ulmer at Brookfield. They got beat 28-0 the next week, and we should have beaten them like 21-7. But anyway, yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I hope every kid out there gets a chance to participate in something like that. But
one of the things that we've talked about here in the office, and Zach has mentioned to us about looking for ways of reaching out to the community, is how Mansfield Senior and Lucas back in 2019, as you were mentioning, Curt, had a joint pep rally, and it really galvanized the community. And Carl, we saw that in Fostoria. They shut down the town when Fostoria Redmond were going on their playoff runs in the late 80s, early 90s. My first year in Fostoria, we held the press for the state championship game that Fostoria was playing in that day, and it really does, especially in the smaller communities. It really galvanizes the community. Everybody feels like they're on the team. Everybody knows somebody on the team. The whole community travels with following the bus. It's right out of Hoosiers, and it's really great fun. It just going on a playoff run is something. Hayden, you could probably remember what that was like for you guys at Shelby. Tremendous support from Shelby fans. It's just that time of year, and we're kind of gearing up for it a little bit right now, but that time of year brings out those fond memories.
So, Hayden, how many members of the cheerleading squad were putting nice things in your locker every week during that playoff run, like "Go Hayden, go" type stuff?
Yeah, for sure. And for someone who, my minutes on the field were here and there. So I mean, I was definitely enjoying those treats a little bit more. I had a little bit more liberty to enjoy them. But it makes me kind of laugh too, because I think back. To the last game we played up at Paul Brown Stadium, where the home of the Massillon Tigers, and I remember that night too. It was so funny. You're late in the season, you're expecting it's going to be cold, it's going to be brisk. I think it was like a 68 or 65 degree night. I remember people in the crowd wearing shorts, student section shirtless. So there's a lot of things that stick out.
Was that was the game against Steubenville?
Yep, Steubenville.
Yeah, when you grow up in Southeast Ohio, when you hear the name Steubenville, when it comes to high school football, it's a scary proposition. I've had opportunities to cover games at Steubenville, and if you've never been to Death Valley on a Friday night, I put that on your bucket list of places to be, to watch the flames and the smoke come out of the horse. I have no idea why they have a stallion, but I guess that's Big Red football for you. All right, Curt, give me a projection on Richland County teams in 2024. I mean, give me the good, the bad, and the possibly ugly for this fall.
Excuse me. There's going to be a lot of good football being played, I think. I think the conversation starts up the street here at Arlen Field. Until proven otherwise, Senior High is the team to beat in the Ohio Cardinal Conference. Chioke Bradley is a miracle worker. He has done a spectacular job over 15 years there. Early on in his career, they would lose to some teams that he didn't think they should lose to, and he told me that, those teams better enjoy this now, because it ain't going to happen anymore. And it hadn't. I mean, he's got a 66% winning percentage since then. So I think Senior High is a team that need to be paid attention to. They lost a very talented senior class. I think 10 of those kids are playing college football this fall, which is a conversation that could probably be had about the job that Chioke does. But so they got some holes to fill for sure, but there's no reason to think that he's not going to fill them. I've said for a lot of years now, high school football in Richland County is a lot more fun when week 10 means something, and it hasn't a lot for the past 5 or 6 years, or maybe a little longer than that. So, I mean, Madison's in a down cycle. There's no doubt about that, but it would be good to see that week 10 game between Senior High and Madison mean something again. Larry, I'm sure you covered that game for a lot of years when that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, the early 90s, the 92 game is probably the most, for sure, it's the biggest crowd was ever at Esley Field. that was probably the peak of the rivalry. Two tremendous teams, and I sat next to Lee Owens in the press box, who was assistant coach at Ohio State that night. He was scouting Chioke, among others. Just tremendous atmosphere, and it's kind of sad to see how far Madison has fallen, because they've won 6 games in the last 8 years, and that was just a fantastic program for so many years, and this is their 100th year. This is their 100th anniversary of the school, and so if there's kind of a rebuild going on right now, this would be a year to kind of capture some momentum, and hopefully they can spring forward a little bit. And I kind of think they will. They're almost due for it. I like their coaching staff seems to have a little bit of energy about them. There seems to be a plan in place. So I don't know, maybe that's just Pollyanna thinking, but it feels like it's starting to move in the right direction.
And if you look at the second half of their season last year, they were a much better football team in the second half than they were early on. I think I covered them at Ontario early in the year, and they got shut out, and I think it was their second shutout in 2 weeks. They got outscored like 80-0 in those 2 games, and you know, there were a lot of heads hanging then, but toward the tail end of the year, they were playing some pretty good teams, and they were playing them well. I mean, in terms of everyone, I mean, everyone has been raving about this Lexington class, the kids who are juniors for a lot of years now as basketball players and football players. And if football was a 7-on-7 game, they absolutely would be in contention for state champion. I think their success is very much contingent upon finding some guys who can plow the road up front and can, they're going to win and lose on the line of scrimmage, because they've certainly got the skill position players to win. Small school stuff, I think, Lucas, there's a big transition there. They lost Scott Spittler, the longtime coach, who was another miracle worker as far as I was concerned. He turned that program around. I think they're going to continue to run the offense that they've, been successful with here recently. So I just don't know if they have the personnel that they've had in the past. Crestview is a good small school team in the area. Steve Haverdale has done a very nice job out there. He added Kirtland to the non-conference schedule this year.
Yeah, you can add Kirtland to
one
that
of those
list
teams.
of Marion
Right.
locals.
Yeah.
And
I was having this conversation with Hillsdale's coach last year, because Hillsdale plays in the Wayne County League. Dalton is a Wayne County League team, and Dalton had a generational team that played in a state championship game last year, and it's probably the greatest team in school history, and they were just good enough to get running clock by Marion local in the state championship game. I think that game was 38-0. And I was texting with Hillsdale's football coach, Trevor Klein, and we were saying, I said, you really ought to think about adding some of those teams to your non-conference schedule, because, if you want to get to where you want to get to, which I think at the varsity level, it's to win a state championship, you got to play those teams. And the way the playoff system is set up now, if you play that team and lose, that's fine, because you can go 5-5 now and make the Division 7 playoffs. But you need to see that competition, and that's what Crestview's doing. If they want to play for a state championship in Canton, it'll probably be against Kirtland. So you better be familiar with what they do, and you better be familiar with the intensity and how good that program is.
Accredited we talked about that a lot in Fostoria, that Dick Kidwell said it was important just to get to the playoffs, just so your kids could get acclimated to the atmosphere, to the level of competition, to the intensity, to the dedication of what it takes, and what you will see once you get there. And nobody knew it better than Dick.
Yeah, they were an amazing, during Dick Kidwell's years there, an amazing football team, because nobody prepared better than them. They were the first team I ever saw that had a computer scout. They had a high school math teacher, algebra teacher, who wrote a program where somebody could put in the other team's plays and stuff, and it would print out a 15-page computerized stat sheet. I remember they were playing Napoleon one night. It was 1983, and Napoleon was, I think, 6-1. Fostoria Senior was 7-0, and everybody from Napoleon came down, and this was going to be the year that they really hang one on the Red Men. And Fostoria had a linebacker, fullback named Chris Hoover, a middle linebacker, and he was standing there, and Napoleon came to the line of scrimmage for the first play. Hoover looked at the formation. He looked at which hash mark they were on, and he said, "Draw left." They snapped the ball. They ran a draw left. Hoover stuffed it for about a 3-yard loss. They came out the next play. They had like a wide receiver split to both sides. He looked at that. He yelled, "Screen right." They ran a screen pass to the right, another 4-yard loss. I mean, it went on like that all night. And I think it turned out to be like 57-0.
The pre-running clock.
Yeah, pre-running clock. It just kept going and going. But, yeah, it was – it's always – I've covered a couple of state champions or been around a couple of state champions in Fostoria, and it's just a different feel. I remember when Fostoria played Akron-Buchtel in the state finals years ago. They had – their best player was a kid that went to Michigan State named Richard Newsom, who was a defensive back. But I was talking to Dick 10 minutes before kickoff, and I said, you guys, if there was a line on this game, you'd probably be like 14-point underdogs. And he looked at me and he said, "Carl, if we played them 10 times, they'd beat us 9. We just got to hope this is the one." And sure enough, it was. Buchtel made a couple of mistakes early, turned the ball over. They had guys on their team started pointing fingers at each other. And Fostoria ended up winning a game that against a team that on paper was infinitely better athletically than they were. Now, all right, guys, we've talked about teams, but we've also got great individual talents. Larry's mentioned one of them around the county. What other players in your mind, and Hayden, we'll start with you, what players in your mind you think are going to create the most headlines in 2024?
Sure. I'll kind of piggyback off, Larry mentioned Bodpegn Miller over at Ontario, and just hearing Curt talk a little bit about skill players at Lexington, I think, we've all seen the headlines that Braden Fogel's already created before the start of the season. I mean, I think, every week it's seen like on his X account he's posting or on Instagram that he's got a couple more offers, and I've got to think probably Georgia being that biggest one right now, an SEC school. So I'm really, really excited to see what he can do this year, and a lot of that does start up front. They've got to give time to get the ball to him, but with all the height, he's a guy who's got non-coachable traits. He's got the athleticism, he's got the height. So I think that if they can give their quarterback time to get him the ball this year, I'm really excited to see what he can do night in and night out, because it's one thing to get those offers, but he's got to go out there and prove that he deserves them all year long. We've seen some clips from 7-on-7s, but again, that's different than Friday night. So I think that he's a guy with all the traits that can get it done. And in a conference like the OCC, he will get to face some talented teams, especially I'll be excited to see when they take on Mansfield Senior. But I think that's a guy that I'll want to keep an eye on this year, as far as is he going to show that, he's definitely deserving of all these offers. He's already shown those glimpses, but see if he takes that next leap this year.
Let the record reflect that Hayden did not start with a young man at Shelby.
Shelby graduated. I mean, Lexington too, of all places.
I was going to try to let him slide on that, just because I know he's got to go back there and work at some point, cover things in Shelby. But that's the headline from this whole podcast.
Yeah,
Hayden disses alma mater's best player in favor of Lexington kid.
Ouch.
All right, Hayden, I'm going to give you a minute to back up, because I know you were flummoxed and you're a little nervous.
Okay.
Who are you going to be rooting for or watching from Shelby this year?
Well, I mean, my obvious answer from Shelby this year is watching Braden DeVito. Again, a kid who has a ton of talent, such a hard worker. He's one of those guys that's proven he's willing to put in the work. Obviously, in the world of height, he's not the tallest guy out on the field, and I think he knows that. So he's got to find other ways to get creative, especially at the quarterback position. He's very mobile. He can get out of the pocket, and he's got a big arm, though. For being the height that he is, he's got a cannon of an arm, and a guy who's already proven to be an all-Ohio talent. So that's a guy that I'm definitely going to be seeing. I mean, last year I'd have to look back, but I know that he was pushing some of Brennan's records when it came to passing, and Owen Fisher's rushing records. So it will be interesting with a little bit of lack of weapons on the outside. Obviously, with Isaiah Ramsey graduating, it'll be a little bit different. They may not have that number one wide receiver that they've been used to these last few years, but I'll be interested to see what kind of offense they run with him, and how they try and utilize him in different ways.
We talked about Bodpegn, and Braden outdueled him head-to-head last year, won a game at the very end, tremendous game.
On a hook and ladder, no less.
Yeah,
yeah.
Maybe the best, and then Bodpegn took Ontario right down the field at the end too, and it just didn't work out for them. But I was talking with Ashland University's coaches about Braden. He's been offered by AU. He's just going to be a junior he's going to be a junior this year, and they're looking at him as a DB. Who knows where he'll be 2 years from now? He's only got half of his high school career done, but yeah, there's a kid that we're talking about, a difference maker, making plays in big games. He's already done that, and he's not even started his junior year of high school yet. So, yeah, that's the name that sticks out to me is Braden DeVito, because you make a good point with Isaiah Ramsey being out of there that you don't have the number one that he's had, but I look for that young man to find a way.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Curt, who are you looking for in terms of individual stars this year?
I think that we've heard about him for so long, and he's still a young guy, that we sometimes forget that Ashland High School has a quarterback who's been offered by Penn State and a couple pretty big-time programs in Nathan Bernhard. If you look at Nathan Bernhard, he absolutely looks the part. He is all of 6'5" and 220 pounds, and he's got a rocket for an arm. Last year was not a great season for Ashland as a team. And when you're the quarterback, that falls on you. I mean, for better or for worse, that's the job. The success on the field hasn't come yet. He played as a freshman. He was a sophomore last year, so he's going into his junior year. But he was injured as a freshman, so he missed about half that season. I think last year was his first full season as a starter. Ashland, they didn't have the skill position guys. I mean, if you remember back to when Taylor Housewright was a quarterback there. I mean, Taylor Housewright went on to a great career at Ashland University, an All-America career at Ashland University. He had a stable full of guys to throw the football to. I don't know that's the case this year or last year with Ashland, but I mean, he's a kid who's going to be playing on Saturday someplace, and probably in the Big Ten. So you overlook him at your own peril, I guess.
Yeah, I would think he would benefit now from this. Will be his second year under Scott Valentine. And Scott Valentine knows a little bit about developing pretty good quarterbacks.
Yeah, they went from Taylor Housewright to Marcus Fuller, who was a starter at the collegiate level in the Ivy League. And then, I mean, it didn't end with those two. I mean, they've been cranking out guys for years over there. And this guy is certainly on the Mount Rushmore of Ashland High School football quarterbacks, I would think. So it's he's fun to watch, that's for sure. Other guys locally, I think Joe Cottle down at Lex, the quarterback, recently got an offer from Miami of Ohio. I don't know if that's as an offensive player or as a defensive player, but certainly athletically he is. He stands out among area players.
MJ is the best defensive player at Mansfield Senior.
MJ Bradley,
right.
As a linebacker. Actually, MJ is the son of Maurice Bradley, who's Chioke's younger brother.
Another great linebacker at senior high.
Mo Senior won a national championship at Western Kentucky. Yeah. His senior year of high school was my first year in town here, and that was, and it's a conversation we've had. If you talk about the greatest high school football teams of all time in the area, that 2000 senior high team, I think, is absolutely in the conversation. I mean, everyone loves the 2019 team because they played in a state championship game. That's a Division III state championship game. Senior high was a Division I football team back in 2000 in the early 2000s, and they beat Dustin Fox, a great Ohio State player. Canton Gleno came to town in the first round of the playoffs. Lost a second-round game that they probably shouldn't have lost.
Right. They had beaten Marion Harding in a regular season and then went over there and fell to them. But that was a great Marion Harding team. Probably, I'm sure, the best Marion Harding team in that school's history.
Yeah. And, get back on the rails here. I mean, it's MJ is his father's son, for sure. I mean, he's actually bigger than Mo was. He's probably 6'3". I mean, he is a big kid. He set all sorts of school records last year. I mean, there's a lot of instinctual things that you can't coach that MJ has. I think it comes from being his father's son, I think, and he's a fun one to watch.
Now, speaking of players, Curt, you were on the sidelines last Thursday night in Canton when Lexington High School graduate Cade Stover made his NFL debut for the Houston Texans in the Hall of Fame game against the Chicago Bears. What did you learn from covering that game, and what's your official forecast for Stover in the NFL based upon an entire half of watching him play in an exhibition game? Go.
Right. Cade Stover is today exactly what he was the first time I interviewed him when he was a freshman. I don't even think I interviewed him when he was during that freshman football season because, quite frankly, they weren't a very good football team then. If you remember, he was a freshman starter on a really, really good basketball team that year, and that's the first time I interviewed him. He's pretty much the same person now that he was then. You're not going to meet a more genuine guy. I had texted him earlier in the week and told him I'm going to be up there. I'd like to talk to you either before or after. And he texted back and said after would work better. But I got to the ball game early and was on the sideline, and I was taking some pictures of him warming up, and he saw me, came over and shook my hand and said, "Hello, Mr. Conrad, glad you could make it." Which is, that's just the type of guy he is. I think it's a testament to his family too. I mean, he comes from a great family, a hardworking family. I mean, if you, and everyone's seen it, there's no, his affinity for that farm of theirs is absolutely well documented, and that's what he said. He said, and we were having this conversation at Tom Benson the other day. I told him a long time ago. He used to come up here and do the podcast with us when we were still doing a high school football podcast. I told him then, and that's when he was a sophomore in high school. I said, "You better make your money on football because there's not a whole lot of money in farming." And he's like, "Yeah, we had that conversation the other night." He's like, "Yeah, I remember you telling me that to make money playing football." And I said, "Yeah, it's you better do it here in the next few years because the window to be a pro athlete is always closing on you, I think." And I wish nothing but the best for him. And I don't know. I don't know what it takes to be a great NFL football player. I mean, I know that he's probably the second guy from Richland County who's been drafted. I mean, Hugh Douglas was the AFC Defensive Rookie of the Year in 1995 for the Jets, and no one's been drafted since then, I don't think.
The solid.
Yeah, Jake played, but he was an undrafted
right.
free agent. Tim Cedar was a kicker for a while,
Right,
but he from Ashland, but he was, no one drafts kickers. So as far as I know, I mean, we haven't had somebody get drafted in 40 years.
One thing about Cade, he's got the body type too, 6'5", 250. He can play special teams. And in the NFL with a 53-man roster, you could probably hang around for a while as a special teams guy who can. I'm not sure that Cade's really in the running to be their starting tight end.
Not this year. They've got a guy, Dalton Schultz, I think is his name. He's and he's an established guy.
Right, but I think Cade's tough guy mentality, his personality, his body type. I think he's one of those guys that you stick. Yeah. He can plug him in a 53-man roster, and unless he's injured, I think he's got a chance to. What do they say? What do all the guys that we know that have made the NFL say? Get me to that 4-year threshold, so I can get the pension.
Right.
I think Cade's got a great shot at that. He's got a relationship with C.J. Stroud. That's genuine too, Curt.
Right.
And it doesn't hurt having a great friend who's the quarterback of the team, especially when you're a tight end.
I can tell you this. When everybody was out warming up before they had pads on, Cade didn't look out of place, right? I mean, I've covered Ashland University football for a long time, and everyone was raging a few years ago because they got a Mr. Football award winner was coming to AU to play. I can't remember his name. He went to a school in Stark County. That guy looked like he was a little kid compared to the Division II football players he was on the field with, and he didn't even last at AU. He washed out at AU. Cade absolutely looks like a professional football player, body type wise, which I think will go a long way. I mean, when you and I haven't covered an NFL game for a long time, and you kind of forget about it. But I mean, those guys are so, and you can't tell when they're all on the field with each other because they're all on the field with guys the same size. But when you walk into the locker room, it's like you're standing among giants. It really is. Yeah. And you watch those guys warm up, and the quarterbacks are throwing 40-yard passes, and they're just flipping it. And the arm strength is. Those guys are pros for a reason, and Cade is going to be a pro, I think, for a while. Yeah.
One of the things I remember about Cade, and it struck me because I hadn't heard it in a while, when I saw and covered games that Cade played at Lexington, when he hit people, it made a different sound.
It certainly did.
If it was in a pile, Carl, and you really couldn't tell who made the tackle, if Cade made the tackle, the kid's head snapped back. There was, you could tell. Okay, that must have been Stover made that tackle. Right. It was one of those type of things.
Because I hadn't heard that sound, particular sound anyway, since again back in Fostoria when Damon Moore played at Fostoria, who went on to play at Ohio State
and with the Eagles.
Played in, several years in the NFL with Philadelphia Eagles. When Damon Moore hit people, it made that same kind of sound. Because I remember they were getting ready to play Fremont Ross. I think it was Damon's senior year, and Charles Woodson was playing for Fremont Ross at the time. He was a running back, defensive back, and that was in the film room when they were watching film. and Dick Kidwell, the old school film where you run it back and forth with a clicker, and it kept showing Woodson sweeping around the corner. And every time he would sweep around a corner, Dick Kidwell would look at Damon and say, Damon, you hit him on every play. I don't care if the SOB has got that damn ball or not. You hit him on every play, and he'll quit playing offense. About the third play of the game, Woodson takes a sweep. Damon Moore hits him right before the sidelines and puts him through the bench. Got a flag, unsportsmanlike, late hit out of bounds. Woodson didn't play offense anymore that night. He played defense, but he didn't play any more offense. I think Fostoria won the game like 6-3 or 3-0 or something like that. But I hadn't heard that sound, and until I saw Stover playing again. All right, guys, prediction time. Richland County schools play in multiple different leagues: Ohio Cardinal Conference, Mid-Ohio Athletic Conference, Firelands Conference. But if we had a Richland County league, give me your top 3 finishers, and we'll work from third to first. So give me your third place, your second place, your first place. Hayden, we'll start with you.
Brother. You would come to me first, Carl.
I'll start.
You know what?
I'll start.
Okay,
Go for it.
Lexington third.
Look at the boss jumping right in to protect
I don't
you.
want anybody to think I'm
I defer
following
my
you guys.
experience.
Okay?
All right. Larry, you go first.
I'm going to go, and I've seen some people picking Lexington to win the OCC. I don't think they're quite ready yet. I agree with what you guys said. I think their strength is in their junior class, and so I think they're maybe a year away. But I would pick them third, as Carl said, rate them the top 3. I want to pick Shelby a second. I'm really a believer in Braden DeVito, and that program. There's an expectation there, kind of like what Lucas has been for a long time. And then first, I want to echo what Curt said is, I wouldn't want to play the Tigers when it means something. Mansfield Senior is, I think, the class of the area. I don't know. We're going to find out. That Lexington Mansfield Senior game is going to be outstanding to watch. So those would be my top 3.
All right, Hayden. Curt or Larry has saved you.
Okay.
You've had a couple moments to
Sure.
to begin to engage your brain. So tell us, third, second, first, Richland County League.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead. I'll just for the sake of switching it up a little bit. I'm gonna put Ontario at the third spot. I might go 2 MOAC teams in my top 3, only because
I am shocked.
Well, I don't know.
I am shocked.
Shelby grad going for the MOAC.
Here comes the MOAC boats.
The next 2 aren't going to do what you're expecting me to do. Although I don't know if I'm contractually obligated to put Shelby at first. I will not do that.
Okay. Let's check his contract, please.
We'll put Shelby at second. I'll do the same as Larry. Only because still, if I'm just going off last year, that was one of the best games that I covered between those 2 teams. And until we see it this year, I'll still put Shelby above Ontario. And yeah, I can't go against the TY Tigers down the road. Curt and I have talked a lot about it. Getting to play there, that's probably one of the and as a Shelby kid, I never got to play there, not being in the same conference. But if there's somewhere I could play that I never got to, I'd want to play a game at Arlen Field. I think that's a special place to play. They bring in tremendous non-conference opponents, and I've covered a few playoff games there. And I just think Mansfield Senior is still, until proven otherwise, they're the dominant Richland County team.
All right, Curt, your turn. 3, 2, 1.
Probably we'll start with Ontario. I think that they lost a really good senior class, but when you have a difference maker who touches the ball on every play, I think that's hard to overcome. You got to spend a lot of time game planning for Bodpegn. It seems like. He just does so many things and does them well. I just think that they're going to be able to defend that conference championship. They shared it last year with Shelby. I think Shelby just lost so much too. You lose Isaiah Ramsey, the running back, did a nice job for him, I thought. And then there's some guys up front that they're trying to replace. Ontario's at 3 spot. We'll go with Lex at 2. I think that the gap is still pretty significant between 1 and 2, but I think that Lex team is gonna get better. Like I said, you just got to find a few guys who can plow the road for Seven Allen and all. They got Markale Martin and those guys back in the backfield. They got a ton of talent in the skill positions, and until proven otherwise, it's senior high at the top of the heap. Joke does a great job, has for a long, long time. Now that's another team that's replacing a whole bunch of really, really good players. But if recent history suggests that he's going to be able to do it, because he's been doing it for a long time there. I mean, they've been able to plug and play guys for since before that state championship game run. I mean, 12 and 13, they had great teams. That 13 team is certainly in the conversation for best senior high team. Was able to replace that, went to the playoff 2 years later, went to the playoffs 2 years after that. I mean, he's been able to plug guys in. So until proven otherwise, it's senior high at the top
They
of
don't
that.
rebuild, they reload.
It really is.
All right, we'll have to leave it at that for today. Gentlemen, thank you for joining the Newsman podcast and discussing what should be another exciting season of high school football in North Central Ohio. And it starts August 23rd, correct?
It does, yes.
August 23rd.
August 22nd, there's a Thursday game. It's at Winford at Galleon, I believe. So for those of us who really like high school football, it's a double weekend that weekend.
Well, I will be back in just a moment to wrap things up for this week. But until then, folks, remember what Mark Twain said. If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. We'll be right back.